Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Majority Show. I'm your host, Mark Devlin, and this is Scotland's #1 anti-nationalist show, going out live on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. This is actually our 51st show, but given that we took a wee break, this is 1 year anniversary of the show, so we would like to thank you all. Everyone who's been watching us and supporting us all this way along for your support. It's been really great. Of course, I'm here tonight with co-hosts. Now, this might be a bit unusual, but we're going to try and see if Niall is with us first of all, and if not, we'll eject him rapidly. But here we are. Niall, can you hear us now? You can hear us, but you can. Oh no speaking.
Oh,
Right. Tell you what, if you can sort that out, send us a private message, and then we will see you hopefully sometime later in the show before your segment. Otherwise, Mary's going to have to do it. Okay, so we'll leave you for the moment. Right. So we are here, of course, tonight with Mhairi and David. What are we going to be covering tonight?
Well, tonight I will be looking at the two factions which have emerged within the SNP.
And tonight I will peer into the misery that is the Scottish NHS.
Right, and also we were supposed to have a chat with Anne-Marie Ward of Favour UK, the drugs charity, but unfortunately that's going to have to wait till next week due to technical issues. But in addition to that, we're going to talk about today's poll, and we're also going to be talking about Gordon Brown's plans to reform the UK and its constitution.
Indeed, okay, and of course, we have Zoomer of the Week.
That's right. Thanks for keeping us aligned with that. Okay, so we'll see you all in a few minutes. In a few minutes, few seconds.
Okay. Few seconds, yeah.
Well, it seems to be one of those days we have, usual technical issues. We had a few weeks there, no problems at all. Today, we've had all kinds of issues getting ready for the show. It does take us a whole day to get ready for this. So,
well, the show must go on, Mark, so let's get on with it.
Okay. Right, anyway, welcome back. And we are doing a fundraising drive for 2023. Help us power the majority's efforts through your donations. Now, many people have already donated, and the donation meter is going up as we speak. But if you want more billboard articles, more billboard, I did that last week. Billboard campaigns, more articles, more memes in social media, more of everything, then please do donate. £5 a month is all we're asking. If everyone did that, then we'd be in a really good state for next year.
Okay, well, we work pretty much full time on the majority, so please make your donations. Even £5 a month helps us build up. Thank you.
Okay.
And or you could show someone how much you love them by giving them an exclusive Resign Sturgeon mug this Christmas. That would be Christmas sorted, reasonable price, and a little bit from the sale of each one helps to support the show. Thank you.
These are all also useful for people you don't like, as well. Send them to
your nationalist friends.
Send them to your nationalist friend.
Exactly, a bit of subliminal pressure, indeed. So, and as always, we'd like to thank our friends at UK Union Voice and at United Against Separation for supporting the show by letting us broadcast directly to their Facebook pages, from where I know many of you are watching right now.
And of course, please do subscribe to us on YouTube for alerts. Once we get to 1,000 subscribers, that algorithm magic happens and we'll get more exposure. That's always good. So that's great.
Excellent. And wherever you are, please like, share, comment, tell your friends, extend the reach of the show at the click of a button.
And as usual, I will be dealing with all the comments tonight, so I'll be looking over here to see everything that's coming in. Please keep them short, and I will try to get as many up as I possibly can. Thank you.
Right, so coming up, we are going to be talking about Gordon Brown, Scottish NHS, and Ian Blackford's replacement. We will see you in a second. Right, as I mentioned, we were supposed to have Mhairi Ward on the show today. She's going to talk about drugs policy and the Scottish Government and Scotland's shocking drug deaths. But unfortunately, that's been shifted to next week. So we hope to get that with you. So please do tune in then. In this place, we're going to have a quick chat about today's poll. Of course, nationalists are all excited because there was a poll that purportedly puts yes at 56%. I don't know, I don't know about you guys, but
No.
I find this very difficult to believe. David?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just fanciful nonsense. I think that the questions have clearly been framed in such a way in this poll that people have been almost forced to give an answer. And I understand that it was of people who had a definite view and were certainly going to vote. That's how they filtered it to get such a large yes figure, is my understanding. But really, frankly, right now, there is no way the SNP can have gained support in the last couple of weeks. I mean, just look at the mess they're in. It just can't be. So I mean, as I said last week when that first poll came out showing 55%, it's simply a dead cat bounce, which is, a financial term for instead of something that's going to bounce, it's going to bounce exactly as a cat would flying off a building. Boom. That's it. So you might get a marginal, tiny little bounce back, but that's
Got
it.
an image there.
Exactly. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's not indicative of any trend. It's just a snapshot, and I would be very, very skeptical about the results. So I'm not paying any attention to this. Yeah, sorry, Mhairi.
Well, I think it obviously depends on who you speak to.
Yeah.
And I think they've got a set of people that they like speaking to because it gives them the answers that they like.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think just in general terms, I think, we've seen the scandal after scandal for months, and then we have the loss of Supreme Court ruling. Core commentators are abandoning them, saying their economic plans, for example, are utter pish. Labour's coming up, and 300 people in a march. It's not a surge by any means, and I was. This poll's actually been in on our radar for a little bit because just last week we saw this thing by Eddi Reader here. She says, just took part in the Ipsos poll on Scottish political opinion. I got into a wee conversation. The researcher told me that so far over the past few days, all called say yes to Indy. And she says it's not going to be published. But, this we pointed this out to Ipsos Mhairi, sent them tweets and said, basically, well, surely this is against your code of conduct. You're not supposed to be having chats and leading people along the way. Now, imagine this researcher. She's, is she having that same conversation with other people? It's obviously... Is she leading people, or is she encouraging people who already vote yes to vote more positively? Is she even marking down the right results? Right? I mean, who knows? This is quite shocking, actually.
Yeah.
So I decided actually from that to have a look at the polls, the last polling on Scottish independence. And I don't know if you'll be able to see this, perhaps. Okay, maybe let's try and see this. Right, here it is. Here's my wee spreadsheet, and I ordered all the polls that had been done in the past year and a half, and I sorted them by the highest yes votes. And surprise, surprise, the top 4 polls are all by Ipsos Mhairi, right? So, and if you took those ones out, the highest result would have been last week's poll by Redfield and Wilton for 49%. So basically, every poll that's over 50% for yes has been done by Ipsos Mhairi. Right. So this is kind of like, this appears to me to be some kind of bias in their polling. And we're taking that up with them now. We've contacted some newspapers about it as well. And, I think there's something really wrong there. And someone else pointed out, actually, I don't know if I have it here. Let me just to see if I forgot it. Someone else pointed out, yes, here's another one, that from July 2016 to June 2019, here's the results here. So only one poll was greater than showed a majority for yes, and guess which company that was? Ipsos Mhairi. So there's something definitely wrong with what's going on over there. Not necessarily. There's some kind of bias going on, and that thing with Eddi Reader just kind of shows that to be the case.
Well, here's Alan Jack. Does anyone know what this is? What he's talking about? He says, we're still waiting for the SNP to release the results of the national survey they held, the one they said had been completed by over 1 million people. What survey would that be?
Well, I'm not too sure about that
remember.
one, but it doesn't really matter. It's a bit like the polling for the, nationalists are always going on about the polling, the secret polling that shows the union's in crisis, but it was done 3 years ago or whatever. And I mean, we can look back at polling done through the COVID crisis as well, where daily. Nicola Sturgeon being on the TV every day did give them a polling boost, and the whole idea that Scotland was doing better than England, which it wasn't, she was able to promote that idea every day. Now, did that give them a referendum? No, it didn't give them a referendum. Is this poll going to give them a referendum? No, not going to give them a referendum either. But I think it's a little bit annoying because we're not scared of a referendum. This is the thing, people come into our mentions and onto our tweets and say, "Oh, you're just scared of a referendum." It's like, we're not scared of a referendum. We had a referendum. You're not getting another one. The Supreme Court said no. There's no path to a referendum. So why the fuck are you still talking about it? That's what we're annoyed about, right? Exactly. And these companies like Ipsos and Mhairi, who are churning, promoting this, they'll have a lot of responsibility for that. Now we're going to have another few weeks and maybe even months where they're just going on and on about it. It's just, as I say here, it's a jar of farts handed round to keep independent supporters high on their own supply.
Really good.
It's a lovely metaphor there.
No. Beautiful, yeah.
But, in addition to that, I want to say this thing, because... we often hear people like Alistair Jack and so on saying that they if there was 60% more, sustained polling, then they might consider independence referendums. Like, why? We already had one, first of all. And Absolutely. Secondly, these polls, we can see that they can be manipulated. Yeah. Right?
Totally.
We can see this is manipulated. So what are we going to do? Are you going to auction your country off to a company that does manipulated polls?
There was always that question of how would you know when there was 60%, right? You can't judge that by just a poll that has 1,000 people or less than 1,000 people and say that represents, 60% of the electorate. That doesn't make any sense. So I don't know where the goalposts are, to be honest.
Well, they don't. That's the idea, and that's what I mean. The UK government absolutely should not be condoning this idea. They basically should just be. The matter was settled in a real poll of almost everyone in Scotland. That's the point. And just because you have an outlier poll done by a polling organization, it's every poll is different. I mean, that tells you how reliable they are because every poll is different. So,
but everyone knows that polls can't be relied on.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I know, because we all remember
we remember a lot of things.
Well, the famous one, of course, is Hillary Clinton was going to win against Trump. 90% for Hillary Clinton, the New York Times put up. And anyone on the ground, I think, well, not anyone on the ground, but a lot of people on the ground knew that was just nonsense. But they were trying to push Clinton at that point versus Trump. So, these polls come and go, and it's ultimately that we have to look at them in the aggregate, I suppose, and say what other ones there. Now, if it turns out they're going to be consistent polling for yes, then perhaps we have to reassess, our where we are. Are we in a bubble or not? But we don't think we're in a bubble. We can see around us what's going on. They have no momentum, and they might, as you said, David, maybe get a dead cat bounce. But beyond that, where can they go? It's a party that's got nowhere to go. No way if they can have a referendum.
Well, I don't think we should actually be that worried or that concerned about this poll.
No,
I mean, I think we can say now, our people are starting to see, or at least we should bring it to their attention, that these Ipsos Mhairi polls are always going to be in favour of nationalism.
Yeah,
absolutely right.
So now we can kind of discount it.
Yes,
to some extent.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't get hung up on opinion poll results.
No, we're not hung up on it. It's still annoying to see them all livened again, and it's when it's like this used to be put to bed now, and we should get onto the task of destroying the remnants of their actual nationalism. I heard some kind of weird noise there. All right. Anyway, moving on. We'll be back in a second. We're going to talk about Gordon Brown's efforts to rearrange United Kingdom. Right. Okay, so here we are. Now, let me see what we got. Gordon Brown's long-awaited review of the UK Constitution came out. Now, as regular viewers of the show will know, I have been quite critical of Gordon Brown. I think we all have been
Mm.
to some extent. He got us into this devolution mess to
Yeah.
begin with and decided to imbue it with lack of powers that meant nationals could take it over and then use it as a vehicle to pursue their independence pipe dream, which could have had some success perhaps. But thankfully it's been reined in now, no thanks to Gordon Brown. So anyway, Gordon Brown said months ago he was going to create a review of the UK's constitution, and nation groaned.
Yeah.
What more damage is this man going to do? Wasn't it bad enough the first time? And we produced multiple tweets and Facebook posts saying, no more appeasement, Gordon, please. Anyway, but actually, what happened was the last time we complained, when a Labour MP, not MP, senior Labour figure came in and said that the proposals would mainly be about English devolution and try to restore to devolve power in England, because of course Scotland has devolved power, England doesn't.
Yeah.
Now, again, we're a bit sceptical about that because English generally don't want to have more layers of government. I think they rejected their Parliament, didn't they? They rejected the Welsh, not Welsh, the Yorkshire one or something. David, do you know about that?
Yeah, that's true. It was like an attempt to say, did they want further devolution of powers to like local government level? I think the answer was no. Frankly, we don't. So yeah, and they've in the past, of course, the UK electorate's turned down proportional representation, so there isn't really any great appetite for change in England. Certainly not. I mean, I don't see it. Quite often you get these regions talked about, like Yorkshire or the North West or whatever, in terms of possibly being a devolved region, a region to which the powers could be devolved. But I'm not seeing it. I don't really see the drive for it there, the demand, the appetite.
No, and there's not, to be honest, after the experience that we've had here in Scotland, the drive and demand for it is declining by the minute.
Yeah, indeed.
If you don't believe the polls. So anyway, but he came out with his plan the other day. Here's the step of the man himself. Labour unveils plans to overhaul Constitution and replace Lords. Now, that was the main part of it, that he wants to replace the House of Lords. Feel free to come in at any point.
Well, I mean, I would just say that a lot of people would be in favour of some kind of reform of the House of Lords, wouldn't we?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's
I'm definitely against hereditary peers being in the House of Lords.
I'm not too keen on life peers either. Come to that, and Michelle Mode is giving us all a very good indication of what caliber of person is becoming a life peer these days. I mean, my goodness.
Well, I think if there was some kind of scheme, I'll call it a scheme, whereby people who were very successful in life or who had done an awful lot for the country and had earned it, if you'd earned your way in there.
And that's the idea.
I don't mean just in terms of money, but in achievements. If you'd earned your way in there, then that would be okay.
Well, I think that's what they consider that to be. That's what I think they would say is actually happening right now.
I think that's the idea right now. Yeah, I think
the idea. But what's happened now? We've got 800 lords in there, and you've got all these Church of England not lords, but people in there, and they've got all hereditary peers and so on.
How on earth did it ever get to 800?
Just stuffed it with folk.
It's
great. Are they just buying favour?
That's what it is. It's used as favours is exactly right. If somebody gives enough money to a particular campaign or gives enough backing, they'll be rewarded with a seat in the Lords. Look at Ruth Davidson, for example. I mean, was she absolutely outstanding in her field? Had she reached the end of a glittering career, following which the only proper place for her to go would be the House of Lords? Absolutely not. Nothing of the sort. There was a ludicrous appointment, as a lot of them are.
Yeah, and also you could say Michelle Moan and other ones that just seem to be like, okay, you made a wee bit of money, all right, we need some Tory women, okay, so David Cameron puts her in, and we're kind of seeing the result of that right now. So the idea is to replace this idea with with a Senate of the nations, which is a bit, I don't really like that terminology, but it doesn't, all it really means is that it's proportional representation across the nation. So I don't really think that's a big issue. It doesn't seem to give much more power to Scottish nationalists. I don't know if you've got to think that, David. It's just, have you thought that? No, I don't think it's a big thing, right?
No, I
don't think that's particularly controversial. Then there are actual Scotland proposals, which I won't go through in detail because there's not actually that many of them. There's about 5 or 6, but I just wanted to highlight the main ones that we have here. And you know, when you look through them, you think, well, actually, these don't really give much extra power to at all. This is them here, and many other 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 of them, right? So it's not really a lot. And as I said, I'll go through some of the main ones. So the first one is, I think the main one, perhaps maybe a bit most controversial, is that the one that gives more international power. It says that the Foreign Affairs Reservation should be amended to permit the Scottish Government, with the agreement of the Scottish Parliament, to enter into international agreements and join international bodies. Well, you're like, oh, that's no good at all. We've had enough trouble with the pretend embassies and so on, right? But it says in relation to devolved matters. So that seems like a fairly clear limitation on what they can do. Now, we don't like that to some extent. I don't really think Scotland should have a national. Why does it need to have, you know, better relations with Iceland? You know, that type of thing. You know, just as well, Glasgow Council could have better relations with Iceland. It's really, you know, it's not really a big thing. But okay, I mean, is that's the biggest extra power they get? It's not so much. And then another one that's interesting, though, this is the one I found most interesting, is the enhanced status for MSPs. Members of the Scottish Parliament should enjoy the same privileges and protections as members of Parliament in relation to statements made in the proceedings. Now, this is quite a big one, because this is actually, while it's an increase in powers, it's something that can be used against the nationalists. Because, you know, if you cast your mind back to the Alex Salmond trial, the MSPs were not allowed to talk about many of the issues because they didn't have legal immunity or privilege, parliamentary privilege, excuse me. So, David, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is one that the SNP will resist. They won't be for this idea at all. I don't think the SNP would be in any way pro more transparency in Holyrood or allowing some previously unmentionables, as you say, to be discussed. Genuinely, I don't think they'll go for this. I think they'll think, no, let's just keep it all quiet. Because I remember the Salmond inquiry. They interviewed Peter Morrell, and they said, so Jackie Bailey, I think it was, said to him, so when was it you first were told that something was amiss with Alex Salmond? And he said, oh, I'm not going to reveal anybody's private information. And Jackie Bailey said, no, I'm not asking you to. I'm just asking when you were told. And just hid stonewalled and hid behind, oh, no, we've got to protect the innocent victims, so no, I'm not going to answer that question. All she said was, when were you first told? That was it. So it's being horribly abused, this idea that there's got to be this gagging, if you like, in Holyrood. So I would be all for this one. It's the one thing he said I thought made sense. I don't think the SNP will, though, but we possibly...
No, well, they're obviously not going to be for that, right? No. And then, of course, finally...
But would they have much of a say?
Well, probably not. Well, it's Scottish Parliament, isn't it? So, is it? Or is it
well,
UK?
No,
Who's
you're talking about UK reforms. So, if Gordon Brown gets these reforms through, then it would be a UK decision. So, the SNP would just have to abide by it, wouldn't they?
I guess so. I mean, they scream and shout that it was being foisted upon them by the Westminster and all this nonsense.
It's a bit difficult to argue against more transparency. Though.
Absolutely.
Although they do that all the time.
I don't think they'll argue. I think they just won't do it.
Well, then, if the rules are changed, it's a different thing. Finally, of course, the main part of the actual devolution thing was more devolution to local government. There's a strong case for pushing power as close as possible to people in Scotland, and consideration should be given to establishing new forms of local and regional leadership, such as directly elected mayors. So I'd like to announce, in the case of a Labour win, that I will be standing to be Mayor of Glasgow. And as an independent, I'm ready to crack heads and get things done. Make Glasgow smile again. And here is my mug, campaign mug, which will be repurposed. This is my original 1989, 1990, whatever it is. Glasgow miles better. So make Glasgow smile again. And I expect all of you watching this to vote for me. For
Absolutely.
If you vote for Mark, you'll get a seat in the House of Lords.
Very good, yeah. So I like your campaigning there. I like that, cracking heads and kicking down doors. That's another one, Mark.
Oh, that's it. Yes, okay, kick doors. Yes, that's it.
Earlier on today, Mark, when you told me about the cracking heads, I thought you said you were appealing to crackheads. That could work.
That's part of it, And I'm happy to kick down doors, especially if the bottom third of them has been sawn off first. Exactly. Anyway, that aside, and expect your votes. Perhaps Brown was reined in by his more pragmatic Scottish Labour MPs.
Mark, I hope Rita wasn't talking about you here. She said more power to the idiots. Thanks, Rita.
Thanks. Thank you for your support there. I can see it's going to be a long and lonely journey.
You're collecting votes already. You have my vote, Mark, from Ellen
Gibson. Come on, keep them going. That's it. Anyway, I think, we complain about Gordon Brown a lot, but I think the end result is that his proposal did draw a fine line, not giving nationalists more, and presenting Labour as a face of safe change. And this is, I think, we read about this during this week. Anna Sauer mentioned it. He says, we're this safe alternative. You can jump off a cliff with the nationalists, or you'll get progressive change with Labour. And I think that's good for the majority of folk who don't really want to jump off a cliff, even if Nicola Sturgeon tells them to do that. Okay.
Your campaign started already, Mark.
Me. This guy here. Okay. Where are we? Okay, coming up, it's going to be Mhairi's going to take over Niall's section, so we'll see how that goes.
I will be doing Mhairi in the style of Niall.
NHS. Then David's going to talk about Blackford's resignation. Blackford's resignation and replacement.
Blackford.
And then it'll be Zoomer's. Right, let's see if we can get through all that.
Okay, well, I'm very sorry that Niall wasn't able to join us tonight, but he did tell me what he wanted to say, so I will try to say it the way he would say it. So this week we wanted to look at the Scottish NHS, and he says, under the embarrassing stewardship of Humza Yousaf, our NHS, which was once on its knees, is now on all fours, dying, gasping for breath. Even use the word embarrassing because people's lives are at stake here. It is actually a serious subject, so we'll try to take it more seriously. So let's have a look at some of the latest stats, courtesy of Jackie Bailey.
Jackie Bailey, got that one? Here it comes.
Okay, so this is quite shocking, isn't it? That 1 in 7 Scots are on a waiting list. I handed these stats to someone recently and he told me I was talking nonsense. So you're saying that in a population of 5.5 million, 1 in 7, which is basically about 14%, are on the waiting list. That equates to almost 800,000 people on waiting lists.
Well, it wouldn't surprise anyone that. I don't know why you would be surprised about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess if you take into consideration all the different types of operations and all the, people waiting for scans and everything else that they need, it wouldn't surprise me at all if it was 800,000 people on the list. What do you think, David?
Yeah, I these figures ring very true to me. They're utterly horrific. I mean, really, really dreadful, unforgivable, shocking, scandalous figures. They do strike me. I wouldn't surprise me at all if they're very, very firmly based in truthful incidents and truthful counting.
Well, it's coming from Jackie Bailey, so I think it has some credibility.
Yes,
and I would also say that we're just going into winter now.
Yeah,
we've just hit winter, so it's probably going to get a lot worse.
It's going to get a lot worse
the next few months.
And I mean, you've seen the SNPs go to respond to any criticism about the NHS. They'll cherry pick one item of something, and they'll say, "Oh, we're better here than in Conservative England or in Labour Wales." And you think, "What the hell's that got to do with anything?" If you pick one area at which you're not quite as bad as down south, meanwhile you're far worse in other areas. It's just there's no ownership here at all, and the fact that they're leaving Yousaf in charge of this really, to me, just says very clearly that they've got no intention of putting it right, because there's no way Humza Yousaf is going to mastermind the answers to this. So probably the doctors.
Well, I don't think you should put mastermind and Humza Yousaf
No, in the same sentence.
Really.
It's just a little bit too much of a jump there, isn't it? So yeah, no, it's not going to get fixed under Yousaf. I think it's now that the SNP's got a little bit of a taste for replacing underperformers, and we'll talk more about Blackford very shortly, guys. Talking about the reformers here. I think Yousaf will go. I think he'll go quite soon. I don't think he'll still be in his job, and by the time spring comes, I really can't see how he can.
Has he ever had any success in any of the remits that he's been given?
Absolutely
why
not.
do they keep moving him around?
Well, that's
from one disaster to another.
Yeah.
Anyway,
indeed.
But the story gets worse. Chris Musson from he's the journalist of the year from the Sun. Mark, have you got the Twitter?
Yep, that's there.
So waiting times have now become practically obscene. Just under 37% of patients waited for over 4 hours in the week to November 27 in Scotland's biggest hospital. So I guess that means that 72% were over the 4 hours, which it's supposed to be. So you really just have to hope that you're not sitting there in some horrible pain waiting to be seen.
No, but wasn't it you're supposed to not go if you were not feeling well? Remember we talked about that before?
Well, no, you've only to go if you think you're dying.
That's right. So how many people are not going to bother phoning up because they don't know whether they're dying?
No, it's not
honestly.
Well, honestly, I think it's so bad that I think if you think that you are dying, you have to think about, well, do I want to die at home or do I want to die, in the back of an ambulance?
Yeah.
Well, if you can get an ambulance.
If you can get an ambulance because of the shortages there as well.
We'll talk about that in a second, I think.
I mean, everyone's got stories, haven't they, of relatives, people they know, terrible things that they've read about. And from STV, a woman tells a story of waiting in a queue of 17 ambulances.
Yeah, I've got that here. Here it comes.
Goodness.
A pain in my chest, but across my chest and into my back, and I just couldn't breathe with it. The ambulance came pretty quick. They could see how uncomfortable and how much pain I was in. My heart readings and ECG are quite unusual anyway because of my heart conditions. And they just wanted to take me into hospital just to be reassured that it was nothing more sinister. Got to the hospital and realised that there was a queue of 17 ambulances. We waited for 5 hours. You can see how stressful the situation is, not just outside in ambulances, but you can see it inside the next emergency as well, that the staff are working so hard to try and get as many patients through the door as possible and trying to get as many patients discharged as soon as possible as well. This is the worst I've ever seen it in my lifetime.
Yeah,
it's terrible. And it's going to get much, much worse.
It really is.
And I don't think there's anyone that they could actually put on the job that would actually improve the situation. No. But regardless of that, I think it's time for Humza Yousaf. He has to go. He's demonstrated time and time again that he isn't up to the task and he's woefully out of his depth. He should have resigned ages ago, and people have died needlessly under his watch that otherwise maybe they could have survived.
Yeah, he's not. I mean, this is one of the problems we have here is that we have people who have no actual life experience come out of university. They might, if you're lucky, they might be. Well, not lucky. They're lawyers and they're many of them social workers, not people who are on the front line on anything. Who've ever been in the front line of anything. They're petty managerial class at the best. I mean, even Sturgeon's same lawyer, no life experience. You want someone who's been in this situation to be a manager, someone who's either been a manager in the NHS or someone who's been involved in it, someone who's seen these problems in operation. And what we see is, I was on that thing before the undercurrent discussion, and people on there, and they're not nationalists. Well, they're nationalists, but they just see that the Scottish government is, if they say at the grassroots there's the problem, then the Scottish government puts in a layer of its highly paid consultants and employ its own people, and then they all think they're doing good, but they're not actually doing anything for the grassroots. And the grassroots people are looking at these people getting paid £60,000 a year, a whole team of them making their recommendations to Sturgeon, and nothing's getting done for the people. And I think that's one of the things perhaps Anne Ward will talk about. Her experiences, we'll say her experiences match that as well. And the idea is, how can you get care to people as directly as possible. And one way to get care to people directly as possible is not to employ Hamza Yousaf.
Right.
That is not a good idea. He
Yeah.
just does not have the skill set. You're talking about something, it's a massive operation, huge operation, right? The NHS, thousands, hundreds of thousands of employees. You get someone who hasn't even run a lawyer's office, right?
It is
Now,
quite staggering.
I've got people who friends who work in multinational corporations and have spent their entire career trying to get up the top with that, and it's incredibly hard.
Yeah.
And looking after thousands and thousands of people, it's an amazingly hard job. It takes a lifetime's of experience in many cases, and these people just don't have a clue about how to deal with this. They think they can do simple solutions and easy things work, but it doesn't work that way. It takes a lot of effort.
Absolutely. I will say that, the Scottish NHS is run by, any organisation which is run by accountants and is offering, healthcare. It's never going to work, because you'll get people who will just make decisions based solely on cost. So they'll know the cost of everything and the value of nothing. And that is what you see more and more and more every day. And you'll see these ridiculous Heath Robinson ideas being put in. They're clearly not going to work, and they don't work. And it goes on and on and on. And all we hear from SNP is it's worse than England. Right.
I think the biggest problem in the NHS is that there are no long-term thinkers. There's no one saying, what's the 10-year plan here?
Well, so we don't, but you don't hear about it.
Well, we know that there's a shortage of doctors. And, it takes 5 years for someone to train at medical school, and then it takes a couple of years for them to do their junior doctor and so on. So if you want to start correcting that now, you have, you're looking at, before that comes, into play, it's going to be about 10 years from now. So they need to be coming up with a good 10-year, 15-year, 20-year plans.
Yeah, probably need some kind of commission, I think, some kind of national commission to work on it. I think that idea's been mooted a little bit. Sorry, David.
So exactly. I mean, Mary's touched on a really key point there, because as Bruce Halliday will tell you, look at the number of medical students, Scottish medical students, as in Scots people, who are applying to universities to do medical degrees. They're not getting in. And the reason they're not getting in is because the universities would sooner admit students from countries where the students pay fees, which of course Scottish students don't. Now they are upshot of that.
A lot of those students are English.
Quite.
Right, so because they pay, and then when they qualify, they go back to England.
Of course, and others are maybe European. They'll do the same. They'll go back to their country. Because why would an English person who goes through university in Scotland, and Scottish universities are very, very, very appealing to English students, very much so. Edinburgh, St Andrews especially, but they're not going to stay here, because why would they? Because the pay is lower, the tax is higher, and there's a completely uncertain economic future. So
that's a good point. That's a very good point.
Well, they never intended staying here. That was the thing. They wanted to get their medical degree in Scotland, a Scottish university, as you say, but they always intended to go back to England.
Absolutely right. I mean, so that's what's causing it. There is no joined up thinking. You're right. It's not, how are we going to get more doctors? I know we'll get more students. Nobody can even think of putting those
a proper unified.
There's shortages of doctors. There's shortages of nurses. There's shortages of everyone that's needed, to run it. Apart from middle managers, we can get rid of a lot of those. But there's all these, shortages, and that you need long-term solutions, and there's no one out there with long-term thinking or long-term planning.
Point out that politicians aren't really necessarily in it for the long term, and that is perhaps a problem. And certainly nationalist politicians aren't in it for long-term health of the NHS. They're in it to get independence, whatever that means. That's the thing. The focus is always on that. I'm just going to leave that section now, because we have to move on. Okay, coming up in a second, Dave's going to talk about all change at Westminster.
Indeed.
Yay.
Okay then, gentlemen and ladies. So tonight, I thought I would explore the two factions which have emerged and appeared within the SNP. Now, there is a very clear split in the SNP, and that's become apparent in the last 2 weeks. You'll remember a lot of stuff that was spoken 2 weeks ago by Blackford and by Stephen Flynn, and now 2 weeks on, the deeply unpopular, it has to be said, and increasingly incompetent, it must also be said, Ian Blackford has been forced to stand down as Westminster Party leader, and as of yesterday, he's been replaced by 34-year-old Stephen Flynn. Now, Blackford, as we know, has had a dreadful year. He was recorded deliberately now. It's that the recording of that meeting in which he...
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's all becoming clear now, because this was a meeting of SNP MPs. Somebody, an SNP MP, recorded it and then issued the recording showing Blackford sticking up incredibly for SNP whip Patrick Grady, who'd sexually molested a teenage staff member. That Blackford then compounded this by falsely claiming that the UK government would continue to pay Scottish state pensions in the event that Scotland became independent, forcing Sturgeon herself to come out and correct him publicly and very humiliatingly.
Oh, yes. That was bad.
It was bad. And they'd add to that his just awful, lacklustre, same old, dreadful performances at Prime Minister's questions every time, and he's really become a liability. Whereas Flynn had become quite high profile, and he's a young guy, bit of a speaker. He does have a slight speech defect, which is interesting. Very unusual. You find this, an MP with a speech defect these days. But that's just an aside, because of course we're so image conscious these days. But anyway, that's just some not apropos of nothing really, but just to mention it. Anyway, Flynn, the battleground he chose, because he's an Aberdeen MP, was the oil industry in the north.
That's right. Yes,
indeed. He did. So very, very strong criticism of Sturgeon's refusal to back Campbell. Same with, which is drilling for a new oil field. Same with Harvey. Patrick Harvey claimed that only the far right now support drilling for new oil fields, and Flynn very, very vociferously spoke out against that. Now, of course, many of Flynn's Aberdeen constituents work in oil. He is clearly not at all convinced by these sound bites from Sturgeon and Harvey saying, oh, all this wishful thinking about a just transition to sustainable jobs. He knows that means absolutely nothing. You don't take an oil rig worker and teach him to work on renewable electricity. You just don't do that. It's like the guy from Babcock and Wilcox said when they were talking about the people who build warships for the military. They'll be given nice new jobs whenever we're independent, and they can build nice commercial fleets of ferries. And the guy said, you might as well tell them to apply for jobs in Brigadoon, because they don't exist. And this is exactly what this is like as well. So anyway, it was expected that Flynn would stand for party leader unopposed, but no. Glasgow Central,
that was a bit strange, wasn't it? What was all that about?
Very last minute as well. So it was obvious. I mean, they'll probably say, oh, we didn't want it to be a coronation. That's what they'll say. What they meant was, what they really mean is Sturgeon was desperate to try and get one of her supporters in there. But sadly for Alison, only 15 of her colleagues backed her. So Flynn got the job. So now the split is clear. The split is, if you like, in Holyrood, Sturgeon's in charge. She's got her ultra woke agenda. She wants to make reforms to the Gender Recognition Act. She doesn't accept the very real dangers presented by these reforms, which even the Guardian and the Observer have said, look, you're being very, very rash here, Miss Sturgeon. You know, for a newspaper like that, a progressive newspaper, to call out Sturgeon is very unusual. Yeah. Also, her high-risk de facto referendum idea and her support of the Scottish Greens with their suicidal anti-business agenda. That's one side. The other side is Westminster, where you've got a lot of guys who don't appreciate at all being told, oh, of course, the next general election is all about votes. It's not about seats. And they're thinking, hang on, I actually quite like having my seat. So, you know,
yes, I know.
I'd actually quite like to stay on. So what's your feeling about this growing split, gentleman and lady?
Well, someone actually mentioned that to me the other day on Twitter. They're like, right, this is my plan. You know, every SNP MP should resign right now and force a by-election. I'm like, okay, go ahead.
Go for it.
Go ahead. And they go, I mean, and I said, well, but even if you win, let's just say you won, you can just be ignored. You already have the seats, right? What are you expecting to get from this? You know,
exactly.
It's not a referendum. It's not anything. It's just you know. And then he's like, okay, well, then we'll just withdraw support from Westminster. And you're like, well, okay, tatty bye, see you later.
Yeah. Like they care,
as if anyone cares. And he says, but then it goes on forever. And I'm like, well, you get headlines for a day, and then everyone's like, right, okay, like what's next for business? And it's just that's the level of desperation they're at the moment for that particular issue. Anyway, but as going back to the point, I think that, you know, Sturgeon's losing more control of her party. That thing with Thulis, I can never really say that name. It seemed to be desperate to, you know, like a desperate thing to get an ally in there, and the fact that most of her party voted for this guy, you know, maybe a bit of a slap in the face for her. Now, I did see him at question time today, and he was just doing the usual, you know, kind of stuff. You know, he doesn't have a great delivery. It's not too bad. He's got the appearance of an undertaker, so which isn't, you know, very good. It was very morbid looking.
Needs to
It
get a bit
doesn't
of
look
colour.
cheery, you know,
Yeah.
they're not cheery.
That's true.
Blackford at least was a bit of a cheery buffoon. And, you know, you go like, okay, Blackford's up to be a growing, okay, right, kind of listen. Here's the usual, oh, you know, we're denying democracy. All right, okay, whatever. And this guy, though, he says you're denying democracy and you're this, and you're like, no, it's not quite the same feel, you know. It's not, I don't think that's very good.
Is it that
No.
kind of north of Scotland Presbyterian kind of? I mean, that's how I imagine. I don't know. Very dry.
I had a clip of him earlier, but we're not got it. He's just quite dry. But no, it's early days yet. You know.
Yeah, sure.
Not
I mean, it's
not rushing
changed.
any success.
Absolutely not. It's changed that they didn't want, and it's bizarre. Everyone's saying what a great job Blackford did, and I'll talk a little bit later about the actual. The SNP party line on Blackford when it comes to the Zoomer section. But be under no doubt, guys, listeners, viewers, the SNP leadership, which effectively is Sturgeon and our senior team in Holyrood, are under greater pressure now than at any time since they took office the first 15 years ago. A loyal Westminster party leader's been thrown out effectively by his own MPs. Sturgeon's anointed successor to him didn't get the job. So a younger MP has now got the job, and he's at the head of a group of MPs who are clearly very impatient and annoyed at the apparent lack of progress in the fight for independence. So the next general election will seem a very, very long way away to the SNP.
I mean, but what can he do? I mean, he's been appointed as, you know, to rearrange the seats, rearrange the deckchairs in the Titanic.
Absolutely.
Right? I don't really want to call it Titanic because it's, you know, it's a wheelie bin, as we said before, a wheelie bin and fire in the middle of the ocean. And he's been tasked with, you know, making the funeral arrangements.
Yeah.
Well, John T. Scott seems to think that future headlines: 34-year-old inexperienced man replaces 55-year-old tired out woman as FM.
There you go.
We'll see. We'll see.
Oh, the story is, I mean, the story is he's using this as a platform, as a stepping stone to Sturgeon's job. So,
he's just finding his feet first. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Just trying this nice and easy job.
But it's also getting to say about Mhairi Black there.
Hold
on, because I'm doing Mhairi Black as my Zoomer.
All right, okay, cool. I mean, well, it's the fact that Sturgeon has now effectively seen a little bit of a coup by a 34-year-old and a younger woman. Oh, Sturgeon will not be happy about that. Oh my goodness, no. Anyway, yes, we'll talk about that shortly. But so
I'll be talking about it soon.
No, talking about that. That was a good segment there, David. Got through that very well.
Thank you.
And it was very informative as usual. Now there was no what's the big nationals live of the week because with all this stuff going on. But David will return, and I think we're going to be talking about the claim of right, which was a viewer suggestion. I don't know if you saw that, David.
Absolutely.
That's what you've been tasked.
The mighty claim of right.
Okay.
I absolutely will deal with that happily, and I will dismantle it fully.
Right. Okay. With the help of Roddy, what's his name?
Dunlop.
Roddy Dunlop, QC.
Yep.
Casey.
Fine man.
Right. Okay. Things you can do right now to support the show. You can make a monthly donation, £5 a month. That's all we ask. It would be really great for you to do that. Join all the many other people who help us get ready for 2023. You can also buy a T-shirt or a mug. And these have been we're selling quite a few of these at the moment. People buying them as presents for people that they love and for people that they hate. Well, not just hate, well, love-hate relationship. You can subscribe to the show. Please go to YouTube, do that. You can tell your friends about us, which is probably the most important thing. We have a bit of fun here every Wednesday night and go through the issues that no one else really talks about. So, or you can do all of the above, which makes us very happy. It's the moment you've all been waiting for, the highlight of the week. It is Zoomer of the Week.
Yay. Okay, I'm up first.
Why?
So my Zoomer of the week would have been the entire group of SNP Westminster MPs. That group photo had me laughing pretty hard. But if I limit it to just one person, I think I'll have to single out Mhairi Black. She is a living, breathing campaign for compulsory drug testing for
Dear.
Do we have that photo?
Yeah, so of course this is the famous clip here. Oh no! And then the guilty look. And the shame.
Hangs head
The shame.
in shame.
Oh, it's the I've been rumbled. Well, you know, did
anything ever come of that?
Well, of course, she said that she was getting bits of KitKat out of her pocket.
That's it.
Oh.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, obviously,
as you do, and you rub it on your gums.
Oh,
That's
sorry,
the
sure.
KitKat.
let's have another look at it. Right, there it is.
You know, it reminds you. You remember the old advert for cream
Mm.
eggs where they said, "How do you eat yours?" Imagine anybody said, "This is how I eat my cream egg. I rub it in my gums." Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, sorry.
Okay, then.
The question really is, which powder is it? That's, I suppose. But actually, I didn't have the clip for it today. But did you see her standing next to
I saw
the new guy, and she's
Flynn,
like,
yeah.
Spaced out.
It's totally spaced out. Whether she's drunk or in something else, don't know, but definitely not all there.
Well, this week she became the Westminster Deputy Leader for the SNP, or as I like to call it, Deputy Wrangler of Sexual Deviants.
That's channeling Niall.
That was actually Niall's comment,
Big
definitely.
time, yes.
Okay, so why are we picking on Mhairi? Well, she embodies this horrible gender ideology. So being one of the pioneers of drag queen story time, which speaks volumes for the SNP, they're doubling down on identity politics.
Right.
Well, I don't know if you saw this book, Mhairi Black wrote for Nicola's book club.
Right, we'll have to find us quickly here. Okay, where is it?
Come on.
Oh, I know, I didn't. It was supposed to be on there. Right, here we go. And this is it. Here.
Yep.
This is Mhairi's book. KitKat and Flowjob Go Balls Out, an adventure by Mhairi Black. But it's part of Nicola's book club, which you can find. In fact, if you type in Nicola's book club into Google, that's what comes up first.
There are many great books in there. So please, if you're doing some Christmas reading, that's where you have to go.
That's where it starts.
So Mhairi is my Zoomer of the Week, and Niall's Zoomer of the Week too.
Right,
very good. Well done.
Okay, very good. Well, I mean, okay, David, and we can have that question we were going to talk about a minute ago. As a deputy leader, what do you think of Mhairi Black?
I think, frankly, her appointment sullies the role. I think she's done nothing in addition to, other than her fairly impressive opening speech. Since then, we know she's got involved with this Flowjob character. She's been caught drinking on a train, which is illegal in Scotland. She has done something bizarre, rubbing something into her gums in the chamber. I think her appointment has been just... I think it's almost an insult to the people of Scotland, and it certainly does nothing for the SNP. I think I cannot see how this will do anything other than just bring more embarrassment and more ridicule in the SNP. So I think it's a ludicrous appointment. Personally.
Right, Jane. Wait, we're not finished yet.
No, I've won already.
We're not finished yet. Right. Okay, David, you're going to go up with the next. Yep. Oh, I've lost my place. Hold on. Okay, here we go.
Okay. Okay, my nomination for Zoomer this week is SNP MP and ex-Deputy Party leader Stuart Hosie. Now, following the anointment of Stephen Flynn yesterday, Hosie appeared on Good Morning Scotland today in what was clearly intended to come across as a robust denial of any split at all in the SNP. Hosie instead made really what became a gallant attempt at arguing that black is white, and it was quite incredible. I would urge you to listen to it. It's in the middle of the you can play back Good Morning Scotland. It's at 1 hour 36 of yesterday's show, this morning's show. Anyway, have a listen if you can. Anyway, so Geisler, who was actually doing a passable job for once, Martin Geisler said, "So is there a split?" "No, there's no split. I've read about these divisions and I nearly spat out my coffee with laughter. Not one word is true." And so the Geisler said, "Hang on, though, you're talking about Stephen Flynn here, who backs oil exploration in the North Sea, and as opposed to Nicola Sturgeon, who's very much against it. So I would ask, surely there's a split. There's a difference in policy or approach of the two, isn't there?" And he was asked this 3 times, and every time he was asked, Hosie didn't answer, but he just said, No. I'm not saying that Stephen Flynn, in fact, he didn't even acknowledge the question. He just said, "I think you'll find that Stephen Flynn's priority is securing transition funding for the North East, which the First Minister fully backs." And this is this complete fictional nonsense about funding which will apparently allow North Sea oil workers to be redeployed in renewables instead of working with fossil fuels.
That's nonsense.
Yeah.
Of course,
exactly.
Nonsense.
And so Hosie then said, "No, so there is no policy division on this whatsoever." And Geisler actually said, "Okay." And I mean, it's clearly fake. I mean, you've got one guy who's a North East MP saying we must do more exploration. To say we're not doing more exploration is an insane decision. And yet on the other side, you've got Sturgeon, who will not say, adamantly refuses to say that she will back any further oil exploration.
Oh, because the Greens will be. She's got those.
Yeah.
The Greens.
Absolutely.
The Greens. Right.
Exactly, and that's the thing, because the SNP MPs in Westminster, they don't need the Greens, so they're not interested in the Greens. They couldn't care less. So that you're going to see more and more of a split on this. So, and he went on to say, just to finish this off, he went on to say, guys, said to Blackford, to Hosie, okay, but 2 weeks ago, Blackford said he wasn't standing down. He said he was going to be the last ever SNP Westminster leader. And 2 weeks ago, Flynn said he wasn't going to stand for the job. What's happened in 2 weeks? And of course, Hosie's answer, oh, well, of course, it's because of the Supreme Court decision. We don't have a 9-month sprint to an referendum now. We have a 2-year long haul. But I just want to say the party is absolutely united behind the fantastic leadership of Nicola Sturgeon. He actually said that with a straight face, guys.
Right.
So that was somebody
he'd probably get a back rub later, you know.
Exactly. So outright denial. So do you know what, Stuart? We heard your denials, and nobody believes a single word you're saying. Certainly not yourself or your SNP colleagues. So for pitifully weak denial of the glaring truth, which we can all see, and for treating voters and listeners like fools, Stuart Hosie's my the Zoomer of the week.
Well, you see more and more of that. They're being asked to defend the indefensible, and it's it's.
But the thing is, they try to do it.
Well, give them points for that, but it still doesn't get them a referendum.
No, it doesn't.
That's the way it goes. They can get whatever they like, but the Supreme Court slammed the door shut. Labour also slammed the door shut this week. Keir Starmer said there will be no second referendum, which of course is the correct policy.
Quite.
For Labour, I should say as well. Right. Okay, it's going to be me. Right, my nomination, I don't think I've actually nominated her before. It's Nicola Sturgeon, who was in the news because of Matt Hancock. Now, Matt Hancock came out of the jungle and decided to write a book called The Pandemic Diaries. I don't know if he did it when he was in there or not. But anyway, he's being serialised with the Daily Mail, and there's bits about it every day. Well, here you can see the headline. Nicola Sturgeon was leaking Cobra decisions during the pandemic. Now, of course, we all know that.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, but... he says, I'm just going to read a few quotes out from this. In Cobra meetings, Nicola Sturgeon's political games have become incredibly debilitating and significantly limit scope for open discussion.
That's how the whole of Scotland feels.
Very good, Mary. She sits like a statue, lips pursed like the top of a drawstring bag, only jolting into life when there's an opportunity to say something to further the separatist cause. The minute someone presses end meeting, you can almost hear her running for a lectern so she can rush out an announcement before we make ours. We now chew over big decisions elsewhere and relegate formal meetings to rubber stamping exercise. How damning is that?
Absolutely.
That is really shocking. That the whole idea was to give them Johnson said, we'll do a four nations approach, which of course many people didn't agree should happen. This is exactly what happened when you do that. When you give them an inch, they take a mile, and they take a mile in the direction away from what you're trying to do. So, I mean, there's all stuff here, but the big one in this, I think, and the one that's really shocking is when she forced English school kids and Scottish school kids to force masks against scientific advice. Here is the quote. Nicola Sturgeon blindsided us by suddenly announcing that when schools in Scotland reopen, all secondary school pupils will have to wear masks in classrooms. In one of her most egregious attempts at one-upmanship to date, she didn't consult us. The problem is that our original guidance on face masks specifically excluded schools. Cue much tortured debate between myself, Education Secretary Gavin Williamson, and Number 10 about how to respond. Much as Sturgeon would relish it, nobody here wants a big spat with the Scots, so U-turn it is. So because of her, unscientifically, kids in Scotland and in England and the rest of the UK had to wear masks.
Well, it's not just that. The kids didn't just have to wear masks at the time when, the COVID was really raging at the beginning. They had to wear them for like a year and a half afterwards.
That's right.
When it was all over and, and masks weren't being worn in England, school kids in Scotland were still having to wear their masks at all times in corridors and everywhere.
So quite shocking. So can we say to Sturgeon, you're not a celebrity. Get the hell out of here. That was my suggestion.
Very good. I like that.
Right, Mary.
She would love to be on there.
You're so right, she would.
Well, she wouldn't like any of the yucky stuff.
The audience wouldn't like it, would they? I mean, just imagine that all the time. Oh, my God.
Goodness.
We should get on, what's her name? How was that woman who used to do the really good impression of her?
Tracy Ullman does
Tracy
a really
Ullman,
good.
yeah, he's getting her on there. She can do a skit on it. Anyway, Mary, you're going to decide in place of Niall.
Okay, so there's a lot to choose from, but I'm going to choose Nicola Sturgeon.
Good.
Because, as Mark points out, I don't like when it affects children in a negative way. And she really didn't care about Scottish kids. She just cared about having some authority over something. And
she just cared about usurping the UK power, right? She didn't care about kids. It's,
No,
it's really shocking. Anything she could do, and then go and grandstand about it as well.
Yeah.
And there's more examples of it in there. And, it's worth reading whether you like Hancock or not. Who cares about him? We only care about the gossip about Nicola Sturgeon. All right. Thanks for that. Okay, we will be back with another show next Wednesday, December the 14th at the usual time, 7 p.m. This is going to be our last show probably until sometime in the beginning of January, which we haven't worked out yet.
Okay, and thank you to UK Union Voice and United Against Separation and the other pages that support us.
Absolutely. And if you can, guys and gals, please go to the donate page and pledge £5 or £10 monthly donation. It would be a huge help, a great help.
And thank you for all your comments tonight. I'm still trying
really
to
great
get
ones.
I'm still trying to get the last comments, as many of them up as I can.
Thank you, Karen. And yes, Dale, it was terrible.
John T. Scott's complaining that we only mentioned him once tonight.
All right, well, maybe
there you go, John T. Scott. We're mentioning John T. Scott again.
John T. Scott, yep, indeed.
So thought for the week is, look, these polls will come and go. They're going to make their only option actually now is to make as much noise as possible. We all know the expression "empty vessels make the most noise," and that's treat this. They'll make more and more noise, try to make more and more disturbance, but they actually don't have anything of substance at all. Never have had, really. Just flying, but winging it on grievance and division, really. Anyway, with that, we'll leave you tonight. We'll see you next week. Good night from me.
And good night from me. Have a great week, everyone.
Good night from me. Thank you very much.
Cheers,
Thank
guys.
you.